Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Stream by Stream. Today's quite an exciting episode. We have a special guest from Believe. We have Sylvain Delange, who's the Managing Director of Believe in APAC. Is that correct, Sylvain? Did I pronounce your surname correctly?
It's absolutely perfect. Thank you very much, Spiro.
Fantastic. And today's topic will be music licensing for DSPs or digital service providers from a label point of view, and specifically in the Asian market. So we'll keep Asia as a bit of a focus area. So welcome on board. It's been a while since our last one, but we're really excited to have you on board, Sylvain. Thank you for making the time.
And thank you for having me.
Great. So Sylvain, I know you've been working in the music industry for more than 15 years across Europe and Asia. That means you would have developed extraordinary amount of extensive knowledge about the digital music landscape in general. And I guess more recently you are Singapore based. So you'd have a pretty comprehensive understanding of the Asian market, given you're there. Can you give us a bit of an overview of your background, how you ended up in music and what your current role and what you do in that role?
Sure. So if you want, I can rewind quite back in time. I think when I was a kid, I was very much fascinated with Asian culture and specifically quite a high level of attractions towards the Japanese culture. And so one of my main objectives in the past was really to focus my academic journey to serve one main purpose, spend as much time in Asia as possible and create as many opportunities for myself to really fulfill that passion about Asia. And so as the course of my studies evolved, I had that opportunity and to be honest, with a little bit of luck, to start an internship at the French music office in Japan that I ended up leading a few years later. So I essentially spent across 8 years, around 5 years being present in Japan, working for the French music office. And that's really when I learned the most about music industry. I was always very, very passionate about music. To be honest, when I was a teenager, I wouldn't even hope to be working in the music space. So I was really ticking all the boxes. I was both working in Asia and in the music space. It was like perfect, like dream come true for a teenager and for later on for a young professional. So it was really, really cool. And so I spent a lot of time between Japan, Asia, and France doing that, and then later on, quite quickly I understood that if I really wanted to build a career in the music space, I would have to focus on digital, because that's really where the growth opportunities were coming from. So in 2013, after I left Japan, I came back to France. I worked there for a few years. I was contacted by Denis Ladegairie, who is our CEO and founder at Believe. And he was looking for someone to help him kickstart the business in Asia Pacific. I was still passionate about Asia. I was still very much into music and digital. So again, it ticked all the boxes. So I say, hey, let's go for it, and I jumped straight into it. So, and I really like the way that Believe and the way that Denis himself was approaching the new markets, a lot of respects, deep willingness to learn and how to operate in those markets. So that's really what drove me to that company. And since then, I've been running the Asia business for Believe, so growing it from the ground up and running it over the last 8 years. Originally based in France, and then I relocated, as you said, in Singapore a few years ago, actually last year, and now I'm operating the business from Singapore.
Fantastic, thank you. That's brilliant. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about DSPs and licensing and a bit of an overview of the content rights owners, right? Yep. So when DSPs or brackets music services or companies, they're seeking to license music for, let's say, a new music streaming project or service, they have a lot of variety of content owners to consider, right? So whether that's international major record labels reference, we have independent record labels, we hear about aggregators, we hear about distributors. For the audience, can you clarify what's the differences and perhaps the role of each one of these? And even if we start focusing on, say, Believe and TuneCore, which I believe is part of the Believe family, right? So what is the key value Believe offers, and how do you position yourself in the music ecosystem from a licensing standpoint?
Sure. So if I had to start by describing what we do, I would say that our core mission is really to offer a service for all artists. And when we say all artists, it really means all artists regardless of where they come from, but also at the very stage of their career that they're at. So the objective of Believe is to be able to offer a service, access to platform, access to the digital space for all of those artists, whether you are still producing music on your own. I see that you have a snare drum behind your back. So if you wanted to kickstart your career, you could put your music on TuneCore. And
I'm 3 years from a midlife crisis, so I will take that.
So you could actually kickstart your career, or just for fun, make sure that your music is available to your friends on Spotify or on Apple Music, on other platforms, and make money out of it, because the principle is to make the money available and then obviously pay you back the revenues. And then I would say it really depends on where you're at your career. Imagining that one of your track goes viral on TikTok and then goes viral on other platforms, then the level of service that you're going to need to go to a higher, to the next phase, to the next step, is going to be slightly more pronounced, slightly more complex. So that's when the Believe services kick in. That's when we actually had to start to add expertise, people, strategic advices, and all the way through marketing, execution, digital marketing, and so on. So there's really various stages of services that we offer. I would say the biggest difference between Believe and a label, I would say, is that the artists that are working with us are their own label. So they keep their own copyright. They are in control of their full ownership of their copyright. They're in control of their career. They're in control of their creative process, and they know where they want to go. They've almost built a business on their own, and so they need us to actually provide the backbone, the structure that they need to be able to operate that business. That's really what we do.
I would say the way you describe those perfect. I mean, an artist being their own label. I mean, that's really the core essence, right? And I haven't heard it like that before, but that makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. And I would say, we're not saying, we think that there are more and more artists that really want to be in control. They really want to be their own label, be their own little company. But we also know that there's a lot of artists that still require the support of record companies, that require support of A&Rs, that require the support of creative support all along the process. So it really depends on what artists are looking for. We know that some artists are going to be looking for independence, in which case they will be very much fit to work with a company like ours. Some artists will be more looking for mentorship, or for being held by the end to really take them to the next step. So depending on the types of artists, we are providing different types of services, and I would say that's the major difference.
Fantastic. So on our side, we often talk to leads or clients. They're at an early stage in their streaming project. Haven't really engaged with rights holders just yet, right? I mean, from your view, what's their best way to approach you? So what do they need to consider before planning or presenting their service plans to you? Do you need a marketing plan? Do you want to see a long-term vision, right? What's going to help them expedite that whole process? And I think both of us know that can be a really long journey for the uninitiated, right? So, what do you care about? What would you love to see from a new service coming to you? In essence, when they're pitching to you, what makes you feel, hey, this is a great plan, this looks good, and you've taken all the right considerations, for me, the rights holder, right?
Sure. So it's a very interesting question. I think our main question when we are approached by a new player that wants to enter as a streaming platform, for example, in any market, is how is that platform is going to really contribute to the growth of the music ecosystem. This is really key. This is really essential. We are looking at growth dynamics across all markets, and we want to make sure that that platform, whenever it comes from, will be able to sustain or accelerate the growth that we're witnessing in that market. So either by covering a specific market segment or offering very tangible and effective promotion avenue, by offering a remuneration that is fair to artists, and most importantly, that is also in line with the other players in the market. Right now, in all markets, what we see is that there's already a lot of platforms operating, whether those are international platforms or local platforms. So we're very supportive on all platforms, provided that a player that come in is really going to put a lot of efforts into monetization, whether it's through ad supported, but it has to be super robust, or through a clear path to convert free users into paid users. Because I know it can be very tempting to offer a lot of things for free to attract listeners, but there must be a clear path to conversion, especially when a lot of other players are already investing a lot of money and a lot of efforts to convert some of the users into paid users. So this is a really key approach. So if we think that that platform will be contributing to that growth, will be bringing back value to the industry, back to artists, back to labels, then we're always very supportive.
That's fantastic. And I hope for any new services listening to that, you took your notes, right? Very important. So thanks for that, Sylvain. So, I mean, here's another thing, consideration for a service. Do they really need, to consider signing up every label? Because I think both of us would have seen over the years the whole, hey, I've got 40, 50 million tracks, 60, 80, I think these days, it's more beneficial to focus on a specific segment. I think, as we're talking about Asia, I think that's quite a unique market. Japan's unique, very different to Southeast Asia, to Korea and other parts, right? So I would imagine a more focused approach, with someone like Believe, who's strong in the local market, is probably a more beneficial strategy, right? Doesn't mean you need to have the whole, the whole gambit, which obviously can blow out your timelines and costs, right? And I know Believe, you alone have, as a catalog, I would imagine, in many millions of tracks, right? And is it fair to say you have quite a localized focus in terms of content for Asia?
Sure. I think what's very key to understand in all markets is that music consumption is by essence very domestic, and only with a few exceptions of markets that are very prone to import of Western music, the vast majority, and it's especially true in Asia, the vast majority of the markets are domestic music first. So Indonesian, Thailand, Japan, Malaysia, you name it, a lot of those countries are listening to domestic music first, and the digital space is only reflecting that. And it's actually, the more the digital space is developing, the more domestic content grows. So to answer your question, what should a DSP focus on? I can't really answer that question unless that DSP has really nailed what kind of audience and what kind of demographic that DSP is going for. If that platform is looking to essentially target local music listeners, is it worth spending time acquiring a lot of rights from international? Probably not. Even for us, are we going to be delivering the millions of tracks that we have, as you mentioned, coming from Russia or the Middle East or even from other parts of the world for a platform that is essentially looking for domestic content? No, maybe not, because this is no worth. It might impact the user experience at the end of the day. So I would say it really depends on what the platform is trying to achieve. What is the audience that they're going for? And depending on that, fine-tune the right licensing strategy to go for, and the important content that is going to make a difference on the market.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, music industry experts such as, Mark Mulligan, Sheree Hugh, who I follow, and Music Trade Press generally are talking, they talk about the rise of localized catalogs, niche music services that you covered as well, localized focus, whether they're genre specific, could be jazz, right? Country specific, you covered Thailand, Indonesia, really interested markets, right? We're also seeing verticals like fitness and well-being, which is all of a sudden you've got these overarching, you've got social media, right? So we're starting to see this at the forefront, right? I come to you as a service and I say, hey, my market is Thailand as an example. So you can assist me. Say, if I don't have a well thought out, I guess, content strategy, it sounds like from all the experiences you have, you're pretty much going to help me guide my strategy, right? As a service, to sort of say, listen, we can cover you for all the genres. We can also understand, I guess you're seeing trends across the market, even if Southeast Asia, to sort of say, listen, we're bringing a lot of knowledge outside our artists, the intellect, right, of what we're seeing in that market. So you can all help me as a service define my strategy. Would that be correct?
Well, I would say there's only so much that we can do on our side until and unless the platform itself has understood exactly what they're looking for. So what is the ultimate objective that the platform is want to achieve? Is it going to be, again, targeting a very specific set of audiences because of internal reasons in the company, that they have a specific access to a certain types of demographic? I'm talking about, for example, car manufacturer, or it could be companies that have a media coverage in the market that already caters to specific demographics. So it's really case by case. It's going to be really depending on the type of background of the company and how they are going to be leveraging that background to build a service on top of it. I would tend to think that a local player will be most likely successful by targeting a specific audience with a specific type of content, because you can't. It's going to be more and more difficult to rival against the YouTube, the Spotify, the Apple Music of this world, which already have access to 100% of, or nearly 100% of the catalog available in the world. So if you really want to make a difference, I guess you have to focus on a very specific market segment on which you have a very strong added value to bring to rights holder.
And I guess, Sylvain, you'd be seeing data and insights from what's happening in other services, right? So if I'm the service to you, you can say, hey, listen, this is what we're seeing, right? And this is why this strategy would be more solid, as an example, if you understanding all the learnings we're seeing from the other market, right? Very interesting. Right. So, I mean, you're located in Southeast Asia and Singapore, and at Chung Global, we've seen firsthand challenges, I guess, navigating quite a fragmented market if we look at Southeast Asia, right? And we've seen a lot of, interest in that market over the last couple of years. So we see a lot of potential growth still to occur in that region, right? Would it be fair to say that Southeast Asia is a key priority market for Believe? How are you tracking in Southeast Asia?
So yeah, absolutely. I would say Asia as a whole is a key priority for us, but obviously Southeast Asia even more so. I would say that the main reason being that when we look at what we're tracking really is the evolution of the adoption of streaming, and especially paid streaming across all markets. And what we're looking at is what is the level of penetration of that paid streaming in all key markets, because at the end of the day, the trajectory that each market is taking is the same. So it means that at any given time, we can position a market on a trajectory and know what's the expected growth potential down the road. What we see is that Southeast Asia as a whole is extremely connected. It's a very digital market. People are extremely eager to consume content. It's a country where infrastructure are growing. GDP per capita is growing as well. Access to 4G and good handsets is getting cheaper. So it's the perfect combination to see an exponential growth in terms of paid streaming adoption down the road. There's still obviously a few roadblocks, such as payment methods and monetization on ad supported. But at the end of the day, we know that those markets are poised for very strong growth down the road. So what we're looking is at what point do we need to actually position ourselves in those markets, and how do we accelerate our position in those markets to make sure that we are participating and contributing to the growth of those markets.
Fantastic. And it's interesting because, I mean, it's interesting what you said as well. So if we look at, so which one of the countries, if we look at Indonesia, for example, I mean, that's a unique market, right? And we've spent some time in Indonesia. I mean, how are you tracking in that particular country at the moment?
I'm sorry, can you reformulate your question?
We have Southeast Asia. Obviously, it sounds Indonesia is very similar to Malaysia, or if I'm a DSP coming out of Indonesia, or from a new one coming out of potentially Vietnam, is it kind of same for same, or do you see differences there between? There still needs to, there's some fragmentation, or there's a bit of a tweak that needs to occur. It's not all, you can't throw everyone in the same bucket. Or is it like, no, from what you're seeing at the moment, irrespective of which country you're in Southeast Asia, it's the same?
No, I would say, well, yes and no. So allow me that a very vague answer. But, all markets are extremely different in the sense that music consumption is different. The market dynamics in terms of paid subscription is also different, because countries are not at the different various stages. Also, the local music industry is sometimes structured in a different way. We have markets where we still have a very strong prevalence of labels, and there's other markets where we see that artists have come to independence a lot earlier. So there are some changes in terms of, there are some differences in terms of market structure, organization, prevalence of label, prevalence of local content versus international content. So I would say you have to have a very dedicated approach and a very bespoke approach in each market to be able to tailor your approach in the most effective way. I would say there's another aspect, is that the content market is also extremely rich, and it's more often a lot richer than people think. Music is not just about like the main superstars in the main cities. It's also about a lot of regional players, a lot of regional musicians. There's a lot of musicians that are coming out from East Java, West Java, Sumatra, and it's not just about Jakarta. There's a lot going on there. It's the same in Thailand. There's a lot happening in Bangkok, yes, but also a lot happening in the north of Thailand. And those artists are extremely popular. So you have to have a very open mind to really, first of all, make sure that you're very humble versus your knowledge of the market. Most of the time, you know very little, so you need to rely on local people to tell you about that market, to educate you about that market. And then, trying to approach each market in a very bespoke manner, because we want to be useful. So we want to be useful for people, and being useful, people start to understand their need, understand the landscape, understand the ecosystem.
Excellent. So you have an excellent knowledge there. Is it fair to say Believe has soldiers on the ground in all these countries, or is it still kind of based out of Singapore? Or do you have a team across the markets?
No, we have local presence in all those markets without exceptions.
Okay, probably explains why you have such a great knowledge of the market. So brilliant. Okay, so what new trends are you seeing in the digital music space? For example, I think as streaming continues to grow, but then we've seen the TikToks, the UGC, overnight discovery platforms, right, changing, possibly pivoting, right, especially when it comes to discovering new artists. And I think Believe's in a unique position to capitalize on that, right? We're seeing noises about NFTs, although we won't go too deep into that because I think everyone's still figuring that part out, right? I mean, what are you seeing firsthand, and 15 plus years in the business? How excited are you at the moment? How does Believe generally feel about the business at the moment, where it's heading?
Sure. I think one of my key learning about the digital music space is that it's not every year it's different. So when I look at my job today versus what it was when I started at Believe, it's completely different. it has completely changed. And when I started at Believe, we were essentially focusing on downloads. We were looking at banners on iTunes and getting prime spots on platforms such as Amazon Download and stuff like that. Today, this is completely irrelevant or almost irrelevant. So it has shifted towards how to get playlisted, in which playlist, where, at what frequency. And now the shift, there's a massive shift, as you said, it toward UGC, user-generated content. And so that's funny because we were talking about user-generated content a few years back, saying that we were trying to move away from user-generated content and more with a bigger focus on official content. And that's funny how this is changing back again, because now what TikTok is essentially is a massive platform that focuses on getting users to reappropriate music that are created by other creators and then propagate their music as much as possible and becoming viral. So yes, this is absolutely, we're seeing a lot of trends going in that direction. NFT, this is really, really new. We are having a very close look at that. Obviously, it's very interesting. We think it's slightly different than the rest because NFT is essentially direct to fan business, and we think it's going to represent a lot of potential for artists. But we need to figure out how to address it in a proper manner.
No, fantastic, and you're right, because and I think it's interesting because if we look at UGC and Asia, I think it's fair to say it's pretty much where it started, right? So when a lot of things we see in the other markets, generally Asia is really interesting when it comes to, and Southeast Asia, right? And I'll be honest with you, Sylvain, spending some time in Jakarta years ago, I was seeing UGC, 5 years ago. It was still new, right? But it's interesting that some of these trends have been occurring in other markets, right? Especially in a place like Southeast Asia, right? And then fast forward 5 years, it's like this behemoth, right? New vertical. But I think that's exciting, right? Music discovery, more people accessing music is a good thing, right? Fantastic. Lastly, what's Believe currently focusing on? Any plans we should know about, the audience can hear about? And what's the best place for a DSP? How do they reach out to you? Do they go on your website? Do they look out for your team? If you can leave us some final thoughts, that'd be awesome, Sylvain.
Sure. So what are we focusing on right now? So I would say what we've been focusing on since the beginning. So continue to develop our presence in all local markets with a very strong focus on diversity. Diversity at all levels. So making sure that we are giving space for as many artists from whatever gender they come from, whatever ethnic origin or countries or genre of music, to be present on platform. And we're obviously looking for opportunity to increase diversity. And we think this is going to be the rise of digital space is going to give even more opportunities to raise and to increase the amount of diversity, and it's going to be beneficial for the entire industry. So it's very, very key for us.
Fantastic. Well, that's about it, Sylvain. Sylvain Delange, everyone. Fantastic hearing from someone who's been in the business a very long time. I hope we can meet in Singapore face to face, maybe at Music Matters next year. And I know for those who are listening, if you want to look up some really cool music conferences or a place to network, Music Matters, in Singapore, hopefully it's back next year, the way we're going.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, but outside of that, if anyone wants to come, we can direct you to Believe via our own team at Tune Global. But once again, thanks a lot, Sylvain. I know you're a busy man, so I'll let you go, okay?
No problem. And just one last thing, if platforms are interested to reach out to us, obviously you can reach out to our teams locally. We have teams on the ground, so it's fairly easy to find. And otherwise, if we're talking about more global licensing, obviously we have teams at our headquarters who are in charge of global licensing as well. So in any case, you can also reach out to me directly, and I can point to the right direction.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Have a great day, Sylvain.
Thank you very much. It was nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.